I was 18 years old. I was brainwashed by militant movements growing up and stuff like that.
Jeg kjenner handlingene, men
I
ikke
acknowledge the
strategien.
acts, but I do not plead guilty. I'll claim that I was doing it in self-defense.
That I don't regret the incident that happened. And I know that what I've done is sin.
I truly believe God has forgiven Jeremy and I. I hope you will too.
He told police, I just blast him. You shot him twice in the head.
Yeah,
What rifle?
the AK-47.
In a Tampa apartment, May 2017. Devon Arthurs, 18 years old, a former neo-Nazi who suddenly converted to Islam, living with 4 roommates who were still loyal to the Atomwaffen division, one of the most extreme hate groups known. They mocked his new religion, laughed at his attempt to leave hate behind, and Arthurs decided mockery was a death sentence. Inside the apartment, he grabbed a gun. Jeremy Himmelman, 22 years old, didn't have time to understand what was happening before the trigger was pulled. 18-year-old Andrew Unschuk never saw the second gunshot coming. Arthurs didn't run. He left the bodies behind like a message. You laughed at my beliefs. Now I'm righteous outside. He held hostages and screamed about revenge, about bombs, about a Fourth Reich rising. The police found explosives inside the home, evidence of the very hate he claimed he tried to escape. During interrogation, he confessed plainly. He killed because he believed his former brothers were planning terror. He killed because he felt chosen. He killed because anger doesn't turn into faith just because you switch the name of the god.
I could have killed everybody in that building, and I didn't. I could have killed those 2 officers, and I didn't.
In court, his behavior was erratic. One day he seemed calm and logical. The next, he tried choking himself mid-hearing, collapsing to the floor while guards rushed in. A doctor testified he was intentionally cutting off blood flow to faint. A performance? A breakdown? The justice system didn't gamble on guesswork. Arthurs accepted a plea. 2 counts of second-degree murder. 45 years in prison. Not a martyr. Not a soldier. Just a young man who believed ideology could erase accountability. It never does. But belief takes many shapes.
Child molesters do not deserve to live. They got exactly what they deserve. Had to do it over again, I'd kill more.
Lord made me sick.
Do you have anything to say to the victim's family?
May they die also.
Some killers twist faith. Others twist morality. Some killers pretend they are executioners of justice. In South Carolina, July 2013, a husband and a wife wrote their own commandments in blood. Jeremy and Christine Moody were not confused about why they killed. They were proud of it. The Parkers, Marvin and Gretchen, were tied up, stabbed, and shot. They were targeted because Marvin Parker was a registered sex offender. The Moodys found his address on the registry, drove to his home, and called themselves Angels of Punishment. Surveillance footage caught the abduction. White supremacist tattoos covered Jeremy's neck and hands, a billboard of hate he wasn't shy about. In court, they smiled. They bragged. They spoke of God and cleansing and crusades. Jeremy said, "Killing that pedophile was the best day of my life." Christine asked the judge to let them serve time together so they could grow old as husband and wife. The judge didn't see vigilantes. He saw murderers who enjoyed the power of deciding who lives and who dies. And what came next showed their real truth. After sentencing, life in prison without parole, they shouted that they would do it again. That more people deserved to die. No remorse. Just devotion to an ideology that replaces empathy with a target list.
I think Jeremy and I would have done it again if given the opportunity.
Do you have any regrets?
I have no regrets.
The courtroom didn't just witness a crime. It witnessed the celebration of one. And that may be the darkest part.
Jeg kjenner handlingene, men
I
ikke
acknowledge the
strategien.
acts, but I do not plead guilty. I'll claim that I was doing it in self-defense.
But our final case is even darker. Because sometimes, one person decides an entire country is the enemy. July 22nd, 2011. Norway. The calm streets of Oslo were shattered by an explosion so violent that buildings crumbled and smoke swallowed the skyline. 8 people died instantly. Hundreds were injured. While emergency crews rushed in, one man quietly walked away in a fake police uniform. His name was Anders Breivik. And that bomb was only the beginning. On the island of Utøya, more than 500 teenagers attended a political summer camp. They were laughing, swimming, taking photos, believing the world was theirs to shape. Then Breivik arrived, claiming to be there for their safety. He raised his rifle and began shooting children as they ran, as they hid behind trees, as they swam into icy water, praying the current could save them. 69 people, mostly young teens, never made it home. The deadliest attack in Norway since World War II, carried out by one man with a gun and a manifesto. Breivik planned everything. He wrote 1,500 pages justifying genocide, blaming multiculturalism for the world's problems, believing he was starting a war. When police finally cornered him, he surrendered calmly, like someone who thought history would thank him. He wanted a stage, and the courtroom gave him a microphone he didn't deserve. He smirked. He saluted. He called his actions necessary. The survivors cried. Families stared at the man who shot their children and showed no grief, only pride. Norwegian law doesn't use the death penalty. Instead, the judge sentenced Breivik to 21 years of preventive detention, with extensions possible as long as he remains a threat. And he will remain a threat, because hatred built on fantasy never admits defeat. It just waits. 3 crimes. 3 ideologies. 3 moments where belief turned into bloodshed. Devon Arthurs thought he was punishing future killers. The Moodys thought they were executing moral judgment. Anders Breivik thought he was rewriting the destiny of Europe. They called it purpose. Courts called it murder. And the families, they just call it loss. Think about what remains. In Tampa, 2 parents who will never hear their son's footsteps again. In South Carolina, a violent death remembered. No less tragic just because society judged the victim's past. In Norway, 77 memorials stand against the arrogance of hate. No court ruling resurrects the dead. No sentence returns the heartbeat that stopped because someone mistook vengeance for truth. We watch these cases because there's a question we're terrified to ask. How many others believe they are heroes in a story written only inside their own head? Those are the people justice must find before another ideology loads another gun. If you're still here, it means the weight of these stories hit you. Let that weight remind us why we cannot ignore the early signs. The slurs laughed off, the online manifestos shared in shadows, the anger that treats opinions like enemies. Extremism grows quietly, until it screams. Subscribe if you want to help us expose more stories like these. Your curiosity isn't morbid, it's responsible. Because the moment the world stops paying attention, that's the moment someone else decides they have a mission worth killing for.
Step off, step off.
Not guilty! Tell him not guilty! Tell him not guilty, Steven!
Esteban Carpio, the interrogation room killer. April 16, 2005, Providence, Rhode Island. Esteban Carpio, 26, had already stabbed 85-year-old Madeline Gata outside her home, leaving her critically injured. Brought to Providence Police Headquarters for questioning, Carpio sat in a third-floor interview room with Detective Sergeant James L. Allen, 50, and another detective. When the second officer stepped out to fetch water, Carpio seized the moment. He overpowered Ellen, grabbed the service weapon, and shot him twice in the chest. Ellen, a 27-year veteran and father of 2 teenage daughters, collapsed, gasping his final words over the radio. "I think he's going to kill me. He's got my gun." Carpio then smashed through a window, jumping 3 stories to escape. He was recaptured blocks away after a violent struggle with officers, sustaining facial fractures and bruises in the process. At his June 2006 trial in Providence County Superior Court, Carpio's appearance stunned the courtroom. His swollen red face was encased in a clear plastic spit mask to prevent him from biting or spitting at anyone, a precaution after his arrest. His family erupted, screaming accusations of police brutality, claiming officers had beaten him in revenge for Ellen's death. Carpio's aunt went on local TV tearfully insisting, "Police brutality. He was mentally ill and needed help. He didn't deserve it." Providence Police Chief Dane Ezerman countered that the injuries came from Carpio's jump and resistance during recapture. An FBI probe cleared the officers, ruling no excessive force. Officers have the right to use whatever force necessary to subdue a subject. Carpio's insanity plea, claiming psychosis made him unable to appreciate his actions, fell flat. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder of a police officer, felony assault in Gotha, and discharging a firearm during a crime of violence. Rhode Island's first-degree murder statute, R.I. General Laws S. 11-23-2, mandates life without parole for killing a police officer with additional terms for assault. Judge Robert D. Crowe sentenced Carpio to 2 consecutive life sentences, one without parole plus 20 years for assault. Carpio sat stoic at first, then broke into tears, sobbing an apology. "I cry every day for what I did, but the Ellen family, including his widow and daughters, saw no sincerity in a man who had shown calculated cunning. Ellen, son of a retired police captain, was a pillar of the force. His death left a void in Providence." Carpio's mask and family outburst turned the courtroom into a spectacle of denial and grief, highlighting how a routine interrogation became a badge of betrayal. Killing a police officer during custody demands swift, severe justice, but mental health claims often clash with evidence of intent. R.I. Gen Laws S. 11-23-2 governs first-degree murder of an officer requiring life without parole. Carpio stabbed Madeline Gotha and murdered Detective James Ellen with his own gun during interrogation. Consequences: 2 consecutive life sentences, one without parole, plus 20 years for assault.
This all may be my fault, but at the end of the day, I'm a human being just like everyone else. I have a heart and it aches every day. The guilt is overwhelming.
Kayla Mendoza, the too drunk to care drunk driver. November 16, 2013. Coral Springs, Florida. Kayla Maria Mendoza, 20, had been out celebrating with co-workers at a Tijuana taxi bar in Fort Lauderdale, downing 2 massive fishbowl margaritas. Unlicensed to drive, she slid behind the wheel of her boyfriend's Hyundai Sonata anyway. At around 3:30 a.m., Mendoza veered into the wrong lane on the Sawgrass Expressway, speeding eastbound and westbound traffic at 80 to 96 miles an hour. She slammed head-on into a 2012 Toyota Camry carrying best friends Marisa Catronio, 21, and Caitlin Nicole Ferrante, 21. The impact crushed the Camry's engine into Catronio's seat, killing her instantly. Ferrante, the driver and eldest of 3 siblings, clung to life for 4 days before succumbing at Broward Health North. Mendoza shattered both her legs but survived, wheelchair-bound for over a year. Minutes before the crash, Mendoza had tweeted, "Too drunk to care," a boast aimed at her boyfriend, upset she was out drinking instead of home. The post went viral, fueling outrage. Charged with 2 counts each of DUI manslaughter while impaired and with unlawful blood alcohol level, hers measured .15, nearly twice the legal limit, plus vehicular homicide and driving without a license causing death. Mendoza faced up to 30 years, and in February 2015, she pleaded guilty to the 2 DUI manslaughter counts. At her May 4, 2015 sentencing in Broward County Circuit Court, the courtroom overflowed with grief. Catronio's cousin Donna Ramirez read a letter from her aunt. "I should be paying for a wedding, not a coffin." Ferrante's mother, Christine, sobbed. "You took everything I worked so hard to keep safe. My heart and soul are broken." Both families sued Mendoza, her boyfriend, T-Mobile, her employer, and the bar, seeking accountability. Florida's DUI manslaughter statute, FLASTAT 782.017, treats impaired driving causing death as second-degree murder, punishable by up to 15 years per count. Judge John J. Hurley, unmoved by Mendoza's tears and apologies, "I'll live with this in my heart every day," imposed 24 years in prison, 6 years probation, and a lifetime driving ban. Mendoza wailed as the gavel fell, her remorse clashing with the family's unforgiving pain. Catronio worked in a pediatrician's office. Ferrante attended Palm Beach State College. 2 bright futures erased by 1 reckless night. The tweet became a symbol of indifference, turning Mendoza's courtroom breakdown into a cautionary tale of digital recklessness. Drunk driving isn't just a mistake, it's manslaughter, amplified when social media brags about the danger. LAFSTAT 782.071 defines DUI manslaughter as second-degree murder with up to 15 years per count. Mendoza drove drunk and wrong way at 80-plus miles an hour, killing Marisa Catronio and Caitlin Ferrante. Consequences: 24 years in prison, 6 years probation, lifetime driving ban.
Anybody says anything back there, arrest them.
Stop it! Stop it, please!
Ellis Nelson Ortiz Nieves, June 13, 2017. Gaines Township, Michigan. Ellis Nelson Ortiz Nieves, 25, was left babysitting his girlfriend's 4-year-old son, Giovanni Mejias, and several other children under 11 in a rundown trailer. What started as discipline ended in horror. Deputies arrived to find Giovanni unresponsive on the kitchen floor, actively dying from massive internal bleeding caused by an abdominal tear inflicted by an adult's force, per autopsy. The boy, weighing just 30 pounds, also bore older wounds, 2 healing broken ribs, bruises shaped like belt buckles on his head, back, and buttocks, and cigarette burns. Ortiz Nieves, a habitual offender on parole, claimed innocence, but witnesses, including Giovanni's 10-year-old brother, told investigators Ortiz Nieves was responsible for ongoing severe violence. Ortiz Nieves' girlfriend, Sanja Hernandez, had a history with Child Protective Services since 2014, after THC exposure in an older child. She later blamed Ortiz Nieves, but was convicted of perjury and second-degree child abuse for lying at trial. In December 2017, a Kent County jury convicted Ortiz Nieves of felony murder and first-degree child abuse after just hours of deliberation. At his January 2018 sentencing, Judge Mark Trosok unleashed. "You're the lowest form of human life I've observed. You beat this little boy to death?" Detailing the horrors, "You put cigarettes out on this poor child." Trosok triggered Ortiz Nieves' rage. He lunged at deputies, shouting profanities and struggling wildly. "Anybody says anything back there?" He was forcibly removed, kicking and screaming as the gallery gasped. Michigan's felony murder statute MCL 750.316 treats child abuse causing death as first-degree murder, mandating life without parole. Ortiz Nieves received mandatory life for murder, plus 80 to 150 years for child abuse. Giovanni's grandmother, Nora Viriel Malero, marked his 5th birthday in court. "You tore our family apart." The boy, a giggling child who loved playing outside, was failed by a system that overlooked red flags. Ortiz Nieves' outburst wasn't remorse, it was denial from a monster, as the judge branded him, turning sentencing into a raw confrontation with evil. Child abuse hidden as discipline escalates to murder. Vigilance from families and CPS is crucial. MCL 750.316 covers felony murder via child abuse, requiring life without parole. Ortiz Nieves beat 4-year-old Giovanni Mejias to death, inflicting fatal abdominal trauma and prior burns and breaks. Consequences: mandatory life without parole for murder, plus 80 to 150 years for child abuse. 3 killers, 3 courtrooms, 3 punishments. Life sentences, decades in prison, and no path to freedom. Yet all share a core: crimes that broke lives, laws that defined them, and consequences that tried to balance justice with pain. These cases reveal more than verdicts. They show how grief, rage, and remorse collide in public view. A statute can define murder, but it cannot measure loss. A sentence can lock away a killer, but it can't bring back a loved one.